it's Liliana the Magnificent, and welcome back to my secondary city, aka my hideaway city called Bobatons. In this video, I am going to talk about how to efficiently negotiate within Guild Battlegrounds. So if you are familiar with Guild Battlegrounds and you're familiar with the Friends Tavern, you'll know that within the Friends Tavern, there is a tavern boost called Extra Turn. However, this extra turn boost only grants you an extra turn within Guild Expedition negotiations, not Guild Battlegrounds. I do have another video that I'm going to link up here that talks generally about negotiations, and I do talk more about that extra turn boost and Guild Expeditions within that video. However, our focus, Guild Battlegrounds. So that turn does give you 4 turns possible within Guild Expedition. In Guild Battlegrounds, you are stuck with only having 3 turns or 3 chances to complete a negotiation. So the strategies that I'm going to share here, I've kind of adapted from FoE Helper. So FoE Helper is a tool that is available on PC, and they have just updated to their newest version upon INO's kind of request, or I guess threat or demand, I guess I would say. But I will have a video about FoE Helper, and I know there's been a lot of controversy around it lately, and honestly, I don't use it too often because I do play mobile, but when I was using it, I really paid attention to what it did and how it kind of attacked or looked at negotiations, and I've been adapting it for Guild Battlegrounds, and it's really helpful. So let's talk about this strategy. The first thing that you're going to want to do is, well, we don't have a target right now in our Guild Battlegrounds, and that's actually all right with me. However, we do have a lot of places where we could do a negotiation. So knowing my guild, they probably want to get towards the center, so let's just see what this negotiation looks like. Okay, so this is a good negotiation to start off. And one of the things that you're going to want to look for when you're negotiating is for any kind of combination sectors that only ask you to use 4 or 5 either supplies, coins, or goods. Things that have 6 of these are a lot harder to solve when you only have 3 turns. So we're going to try to solve this one. And normally you always want to double up on one of them, and we're going to see what happens. Oh, so this one is going to be a tough one. So they left me with 3 choices, so this might not go as well as I was hoping for. Oh, okay, so that was sheer luck, so I can't say anything with that, but there was a nice pattern to that, and I know I've talked about patterns in that past video. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this sector again and see. So now it's turned in to a 6 choice sector, so I would like to avoid that because I have a chance of not solving it within the 3 and then wasting a lot of goods. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our open sectors and see what those options are. So this one is a 5. That is a good sector, so that might be one that we look at. And because we have some progress on it, I'm all right with that. So I think we might just go after it. But let's look at some of these other options as well. This is also a 5 choice. Now be mindful, I have less goods in my previous era. So if you're choosing between doing this sector and the sector that I just was at, you would want to do the other sector because you're going to have more goods from your current era than you do your previous era. So I'm going to ignore this one, even though, let's see what other options there are, just for kicks and giggles. So this one I would avoid. There is 6. So basically what we're doing, it's something called resetting. So even though this is my target, and I really do want to work on this target, we're going to reset the negotiations. This actually also works for military units, but that's a separate video. So let's solve this one down here and see if it resets the sector that we want it to do up above. Okay, so this is a little bit better. We have more to work with. So normally in FoE Helper, what they do is they would ignore at least one of these goods and so the one that I normally ignore is this one. So I'm not going to use wool at all in the next options that I do. And we're going to double up on the others. So I didn't put wool as an option whatsoever. And we're going to see what happens. Okay, so now looking at this, we know that jewels go here. We know that we're going to have, this is still the hard part, we know that this one's going to go somewhere, we know that we're going to have our wool go somewhere, and we know that our ebony is going to go somewhere. So not a foolproof, but at least we can see what happens. And it was no good, so now we have to retry, and that's okay. So I'm not going to waste diamonds. I honestly say don't. It's not worth it. You know, the diamonds are a lot more rare to get than goods. So let's try again. And we will see what happens. It's kind of the nature of Guild Battlegrounds. So now we only have 3 options to do. And knowing we only have 2 turns, I am going to stick with these. And we're not going to introduce any other new ones. And we're not going to ignore any either, because we will have it solved regardless 100% of the time. You just kind of move them one slotch over, and this will be the winning answer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to that sector that I really did want to work on, and we're going to see if it reset, which it did reset, but now it's reset to previous era goods. So I really don't want to work on this sector. So we're going to go back and we're going to see what option is available here. So this is a decent option, but they are previous era. Let's look at this one down here. Now this one is even better because it's 4 and it is current era. So this is the one that we're going to do. So we are going to look at resetting that sector. So we've got 4. So we are going to ignore one, and we're going to ignore, how about actually let's ignore the ebony. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this one. So we're keeping one out, we're putting the others in, we're going to see what kind of happens, and then we know now that jewels is definitely here, and we also know that ebony can only happen in both of these. If you can the reason why you ignore one of them and you try to keep one in is you can see that there's definitely no more coins because of that last combination that we did. So that's why that coins are no longer available for either of those two. So we know this is going to be a winning combination for us. Perfect. So now let's go back and see if this reset or not. So now it has a mixture. So these are all of the different negotiation options. Now you have previous and current era. I'd still like to avoid it because it is 6. And they're just in general a lot harder to do. So now this one is a good one. It's 4 and it's current era. So we're just going to stick with it. And it's also, like I said, the sector over here that we're working on anyway. Okay, so we only have one option here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore this jewelry altogether, and I'm just going to bring in the coins and see where the coins are, because then we'll only be left with the jewelry for our last options. I guess not jewelry, but jewels. Well, I guess it is jewelry. That makes no sense. It should be pretty earrings or something. Oh well. Just noticed that right now. Okay. So now once again, if this were our target sector, this is what I'd be doing. So now you can tell it reset again. We're absolutely not going to go after that sector. That poor sector is not getting any love from me today. Okay, this one's not a bad option. It is 5. It is previous era though. So let's look down here and see if we can't reset our options. Ooh, definitely don't want to go after that one. I don't mind. And obviously, you guys, this is for a guild that is not looking to conquer all and kill everything in Guild Battlegrounds. So in my main world, there's not a lot of options to reset your negotiations or even sometimes your military. if you're doing a different strategy of the priming and farming strategy. So be mindful of that. This one is no good. So honestly, what we're going to do is we're going to go after this one. Okay, so we only have one left. I'd like to ignore that one since we know it's somewhere, and we're going to bring in our other ones to see where they might be if there are any. Okay, so that was a good one. It was sheer luck, but it brought those two in, and now we are left knowing for sure that this one goes here. So that's why you like to ignore one, where if I were, for instance, to bring that in, and I were to put maybe that one here, and then I were to do, maybe I accidentally did stone twice, then it would have been a little bit more difficult sometimes to see where things may go, but just depends. It's what I've kind of picked up with time, and you're more successful than not without having FoE helper to help. So now let's look at this again. So it did reset again. Still, I'd like to avoid that one. So let's go back to this one and see what it looks like. So this is a 4. I don't mind this 4. Actually, it's got 2 from my current and 2 from previous. So let's go for it. This has been a weird GBG round, honestly. Now, in a case like this, where you can also do it this way, when there's only 2 options and you know you're going to win regardless. So this is just another strategy. You can stagger when you only have 2 left. So then you would just flip-flop these 2. So that is another strategy. And now we just hit 5 attrition. So normally I stop at 5 attrition because if we go and we look, now the goods change from 1 to 2. So this is previous era. That would not be nearly as fun, but let's just check around the map to see if there are any extra options. Otherwise, we'll do one more and then we'll call it good. But yeah, your goal is to really just try to avoid those 6 option combination sectors. A lot easier when you're in a GBG map that kind of just swallows certain sections, and I'll kind of show you guys what I mean by that. Let's actually just leave that be because I want to show you why it's harder to do it in my other world. And then we'll conclude. So I'm not going to actually do any negotiations here, so you don't have to see it, but just to show you how the maps look different. So this is the farming and priming strategy where you can see instead of having, sorry, I was just checking where we are at. Instead of everybody being in a certain location, you can see we are all very staggered around the map. So in this kind of instant right now, sectors just open, so I call it feasting time. So there are several options where you could negotiate on. However, let's say these have been primed and now you're sitting and waiting, and because of that, there might only be 2 targets maybe at a time that we would have set, or even 2 targets that are even open. Sometimes there's no targets, sometimes there's only 1. So in instances like that, it's harder to reset your negotiations to find things that are easier. But if you can at all possible, go after that way. However, I will say, if you're doing a farming strategy in Guild Battlegrounds, you're most likely not doing negotiations. It's most often because you have a high Traz, you're in a guild that has others with high Trazes, and your goal is to farm for rewards. So be mindful when I go in here, you guys. I have not been farming a lot this round, but you can see A lot of my other guildmates have, at least the top 5, but then you kind of scroll down and you can see there's not as many negotiations as there are people fighting. So the goal really when you are doing a farming strategy is you want to see your fights being higher than the negotiations, because it's just harder to negotiate when you have a map set up like this. So hopefully that was helpful, you guys. If it was, like, subscribe, hit the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified when I put out new videos, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye!